Hey, Riddle here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a subscriber. About, yeah, about, springtime. So 6 months, 7 months ago, I decided to get chickens again. And I've had chickens several times during my life. I had chickens before they were cool. I had chickens in the country, I had chickens in the city. But now I have a much greater understanding because with age, if you work on it, comes wisdom. And that being said, on my channel, if you'd like to subscribe, I'm always going to try to bring something new to the table. I want my channel to be practical, and I want it to be next level, and I want it to be about critical thinking. And the world is changing at a pace that we are going to have very, very, very creative, adaptable, and practical skills consistently and quickly. That being said, I want to show you what I'm working on today. I got the chickens, and they've been laying for about 4 weeks now. And even though I only have, how many hens? 8 hens, 9 hens. And they're laying every other day, and they're laying small eggs. Those eggs are accumulating quickly. And no, I didn't style my hair like this. Believe it or not, I shaved my head, and this is how my hair naturally grows. So annoying, like a faux hawk. I guess that means I'm genetically, ultimately a rebel genetically, and I can't help it. So the chickens are laying crazy amount of eggs, and of course I share the eggs, and I can't sell them right now because I would just put them out in the front yard and actually sell them for a reasonable price, because we have a little living community near us that has a lot of seniors and people who struggle financially. And I think it'd be awesome to share organic, high quality food with them. But what happened was last winter we had a huge storm, and it washed the road off that direction. And so the road collapsed, and the city still hasn't fixed it. So there's no through road in my front yard right now. So there's nowhere to set it up where they would have access to come and get produce and eggs at a reasonable price. And that's the thinking of the future for me. The wealth of growing your own things and the wealth of husbandry, animal husbandry, is that you have control, somewhat control, and extra food. It is a form of food security, but it's also a form of wealth if you have kindness and wealth in your heart. To me, this is what defines an actual religious or spiritual person, not someone who lives in fear and follows the dictation of a book, but someone who actively thinks of others and is kind and generous. So, that being said, all my friends, when they taste my stuff and they see all my extra and I'm giving stuff away, they're like, you should sell. The thing is, that would take all the joy away for me. It would become a job. And then you get into all the complicated human bullshit, with the food allergies and are you really organic? And they're going to test everything. And screw that. I just want to enjoy life, and I love growing things, and I love living things. And if I sell those eggs to a local store or something, what's going to happen is they're going to take the eggs and they're going to jack them up to $7, $8, $9 a dozen, and then they're going to be unaffordable to the retirees and the people who are the backbone of our society, who actually really need the nutrition more than the hippie elite that can afford overpriced food. So, eggs. Too many eggs. So, what do? I started researching, and the way my brain works, like I research, I take months. I don't move too quickly, because this is another part of what's going screwy with the world right now. Um, the inability to critically think. You can't make, you shouldn't make rash judgments about anything. You should take your time and do research and take time to collect. So I started researching how to preserve and store eggs before the chickens were even here, when the coop was being built. And, there's what I want is the longest lasting shelf life, doesn't need refrigeration, takes up the least amount of space. I want like hardcore prepper level protein. So in regards to preserving eggs, you can preserve them in glass water glass. That's about a 6-month deal. Why would I do that? I don't know. Because if I got eggs coming all the time, I don't need to really preserve them for 6 months, except for maybe during the winter or when they're molting or brooding. The second way, you can pickle them, but then you're dealing with a lot of sodium. And now they just came out with new research the other day about how they're seeing how the high, sugars, preservatives, and salts, these things are poisons, and they are creating a myriad of modern diseases that are not just destroying people's internal organs and brains and diminishing their quality of life at a time when they're finally retired and you're free and you're supposed to be in your golden years, and instead you're in your suffering years. So, you got to really watch your salt intake, sugar intake, and these things, because it's not natural. If it wasn't originally in food in that chemical form, then we're not supposed to consume it at all, let alone in the massive quantities that we do, because it's forced into all of our store-bought food. The third way to preserve the eggs was, and this is the one that got me the most excited, was to dehydrate them. So when I watched a video, it was this amazing Englishman, and he showed the 3 different methods of preserving eggs, his 3 favorite. And what he did is he took the eggs and he shelled them, no salt, no oil, because the oil will make it rancid, but he fried them. He fried them in a pan, like a nonstick pan, and then after he fried them so they weren't yolky at all, he put them in the dehydrator, dehydrated them, he said, for about 18 hours till they were like crunchy. Then he powdered them. And I loved this. I love this because it minimized the storage space and there were no liquids involved. And this would have a really great shelf life. So then my brain, because my brain is always innovating, thought, I wonder which method of cooking an egg preserves the most nutrition, frying the egg or boiling the egg. Now, see, so that's where I'm saying we have to use our brains, not just take information for where it's at, but teach our children also to critically think and always take whatever is given to us as common knowledge and see where we can improve it or where we can question it and take it to the next level. So I did the research on that, and it turns out I was correct. Boiling an egg just right not only keeps the cholesterol lower, but also maintains more of the healthy chemicals in the egg. So I boiled my eggs yesterday. And the second thing I'm doing that other people aren't showing in these videos is that if you're going to make a dehydrated powdered egg, why not leave some of the shell on, especially if the shells are thin, instead of like going crazy trying to get all that shell off. And I'm not saying put all of your shells in the egg, but I'm putting a certain amount of shell, keeping it in the egg, because it's going to be thoroughly dehydrated and powdered. And my feeling is, based on my knowledge base, is that calcium, not only is it going to add more nutrition to the powder for when it's consumed, because we're going to be getting pure calcium, right? But it's also acts as a natural anti-caking agent and possibly somewhat of a preservative, a natural preservative. So that's what I'm doing differently. The other thing, if you decide to dehydrate and make egg powder, the reason it's going to take a longer amount of time, because you do have to thoroughly, like everything you dehydrate, you do have to thoroughly get all the moisture out of the eggs. You want to do it at a lower temperature, around 140, because anytime the higher the heat is, the more it's going to destroy in regards to flavor, possibly, but more so the nutritional value of herbs and fruits and things. So if you try to do this quickly, yes, you're going to get the same thing, but it will not have the same nutritional level as if you put it at around 140, 130 to 140, and you're just patient. And then dry it thoroughly. And then after these become a super crumbly powder, we're going to put them in, some people use a spice grinder, coffee grinder, spice grinder. Now, before I graduated to a more sophisticated blender or processor, so I've always been very realistic, and I don't know where I got this from, but if I don't just treat myself and waste my money on expensive things. I'm very conscious of my consumption, and I'm not going to buy a tool or an appliance or something if I don't know 100% that I am going to use that and use it often, because it's just it's going to clutter the house more. It's going to take from the environment, and so the idea of leaving less of a carbon footprint, but also less clutter, is always healthier, I think, in an environment. I really test myself and make sure that I'm fully dedicated to something before I buy the dehydrator, before I buy the higher end grinder or blender. And I think this is also how I've always rewarded myself. I do the work, and I discipline myself. And then after I've really gotten to a level of graduation, I reward myself. This is how I've kept thin and healthy. This is the discipline that I taught myself. I didn't get this from my parents. This is how I've run my life, and it's worked out really, really well for me, in regards to financial success, physical health, reaching goals. So this is what I love for everything. It's a Vitamix. I got it from Costco. And the thing about the Vitamix company is it's based here in the US. So when something breaks down on it, you can call them and they send a box. You send it off to them and they fix it for as long as it's warranted. It's a great company. I use this Vitamix almost daily, and I'm not exaggerating. The thing you have to understand about the Vitamix versus after you've graduated from a coffee grinder, food processor, what have you, because they're not cheap, but they're really well made. They're strong and they do the job. There's two different types of containers. You've got your liquid container that you can do your shakes and purees and things in. But if you're really going to do a lot of processing of powders and herbs and dried things, you're going to have to invest in a dry blade grinder. So this is smaller than this one. And the blade is a dull blade. And what that dull blade does is it grinds slowly and more thoroughly. And the difference in this blade, you just wouldn't. I had friends over the day, gourmet food people, and I was giving them a tasting of my new creations, barbecue sauce, champagne grape vinaigrette, et cetera, et cetera. And they were like, how did you do this? And I'm like, Vitamix. And they're like, but how did you, Vitamix? How did Vitamix? And so it was funny because this is expensive. Just this is sold separately. It usually doesn't come with the blender. You get the standard one. So the first year, I'm always focusing on how I can do something, not how I can't do something. That's been another real pinnacle of the success in my life. So the first year, I asked for it for a Christmas present. So my sister and all her kids, they all threw in some money, and I got my grinder. I used it until one day I did something really stupid and I put some super hard dried roots in it. It can't handle that. And what happened was it went in and it didn't break the blade, but they were bouncing off so aggressively, it cracked the blender. But something amazing happened. And I always feel like this is a guiding thing in my life. Like, you know, they talk about having signs that you're doing the right thing and that you're living a good life. I was at the thrift store perusing, looking for old kitchen equipment and old tools, you know, stuff that's made of glass and stuff that's made of real metal and not plastic. And I look over and there on the shelf is a brand new $150 now dry grinder for a Vitamix with the original paperwork in it for $5.99. $5.99. And I bought it. I didn't think like, oh, I already have one. I thought I need a backup one because these things are expensive, and that's amazing. That is a gift, a gift. So I snagged it, and that's what this one is, and I've been using the hell out of it. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to dehydrate my eggs with some shell in it, and then I'm going to powder them. And then I'm going to get them in airtight jars, and then I'm going to store them in a cool, dry place. And this is going to be some really amazing food security. And it's also going to be some great camping supplies. And I have a feeling it also could be used when you're baking. I'm sure there's some great way to integrate dehydrated egg into different culinary methods that's going to take it to the next level. And I'm thinking like when I take this a step further, after I feel like I've really perfected this, I'll probably do just an all yolk one, because some delicious like high-end pastries, many times the European, Hungarian pastries, they only use the yolk, they don't use the egg white. So I could also do a version of the powder for people who are concerned about super high cholesterol. You could do all egg white powder. Why not? You got the time. Take the yolks if you're not going to use them. You could dehydrate them, give them to someone who doesn't have cholesterol issues, or feed them back to the chickens. Super simple. So this is what I'm saying. Think. Don't waste anything. It's so important to have that mentality, not to waste. Try to use everything. And that's the reason I love having chickens and I love having compost worms, because the majority, except for plastics and recyclables, the majority of our garbage is fed to the worms and they turn it into beautiful soil, or it's fed to the chickens. And then the worms are also fed to the chickens. So it's like we've got creating our own little ecosystem here, you know? So those are the things you have to think of also when you're creating a homestead and trying to get off grid, is if the shit hits the fan and there's no longer chicken food available, you know, what are you going to feed your animals? If you have animals, what are you going to feed them if you can't feed yourself and if the stores shut down? These are all really important things that they had figured out in the old world. They had these things figured out. And we need to go back to that mentality, because like my mother says, expect the worst, honey, and hope for the best, and everything will be fine, right? And this year, something that is going over many people's heads, because Many people don't follow science, and they don't follow science and in regards to what's happening globally right now, because we're all so interconnected. When like we're looking at the grain supply in that the Russians have cut off from Ukraine, starving the people in Africa. I mean, that's just one example of how we're all interconnected now and interdependent. There has been so many exaggerated floods and fires and strange weather phenomenons just this year, even just the last couple of weeks. And when you look at where these things happened and how they happened and when they happened, all of these weather events have destroyed major crops around the world. And they're not talking about it. They're not talking about it. Who are they? I mean, it's all our responsibility to follow these things, but they don't want to freak people out. But the fact is, when we're talking about food security or food scarcity, we're already facing this. We're already facing this just this year alone in major crop failure, and with a T, trillions of dollars of damage done. And we're not talking hurricanes or like tornadoes. We're talking these new types of storms that are happening and creating these micro bursts of water and these massive amounts of precipitation that are, not just damaging homes. That's all people ever talk about, are homes and businesses, but literally have wiped out crops during harvest time, post-harvest time. And so it is a good time, kids, to really learn how to cook and how to preserve food and how to eat weeds, because I'll go back to what I said before, what Mama says: expect the worst and hope for the best, and everything will be fine. Okay, I'm going to let you go now. I want you to have a great day. If you like my video, if you like my knowledge, please subscribe and share my video. It helps with the algorithm. Because, the ads, they make a pittance. It's not like I'm on here making a ton of money. I do this because I love sharing knowledge, and I think a nice, intelligent, creative, kind, intelligent, creative voices are needed now in this world more than ever. And that's what I aspire to be. Bye.